welcome to my diary, an unedited, truthful account of my thoughts on life and living in my tiny little bus, the Prancing Pony. Thank you so much to my patrons for making content like this possible. I couldn't do it without you. Well, goodness me, there has been so much life crammed into the last week. It feels like I've been in another life practically since I last checked in. Since I last saw you, I was in Big Bear there at the time. Gosh, I freaking love it up there and I need to go back. We were just kind of hanging out at camp and a ranger drove up. All the rangers that we've encountered so far in our travels have been super duper nice. This one was no exception, although she told us something rather unexpected. All national forests in California were closing that night, and if we were found in the forest after dark, we would have to pay a fine. There were a lot of fires raging in forests in Central and Northern California. So they made the decision, and not lightly, to shut down the forests in the entire state. This came as quite a surprise to us because we had been on a mountain in Southern California where it had been drizzling on and off all week, no signs of smoke or anything. And I'm really glad that ranger came around and told us what was up. It was already about 3 p.m. by the time that she stopped by, so we knew where the hardware store at the base of the mountain was. So we packed up the bus, folded up our little outside cooking table, and made sure the cats were all right and just head out. Okay, I'll meet you at the hardware store at the base of the mountain, which was almost an hour drive and a difference of about 7,000 feet. After a quick reconvening and a bathroom break, we were in a position where we had to sleep overnight in a parking lot. That was something I'd never done before. I had slept on the street once before, but never an actual, big parking lot. That was weird, and I'm not gonna lie to you, neither of us slept very well that night. I had put out a couple of feelers, or planted a couple of seeds, if you will, in regards to our situation to see if any friends that were kind of within 4 hours of us had any availability to have some surprise humans and 2 cats in their driveway. And we are so fluffin' lucky that we have some of those humans in our lives that said yes. And so the next day, after hanging out in another parking lot, kind of organizing things with friends, all sorts of friends reaching out to try to help to figure out how we could camp somewhere nearby where they were, if they couldn't offer a driveway. There's just so many awesome humans in our lives, I swear. I'm so thankful. So we found ourselves staying for a total, I think we stayed for 4 or 5 days in a little beach town. We had been plucked from the mountaintops and all of a sudden we're at sea level on white sands. And the shock of it all was really major. Because our plans were, if we could help it, were to pretty much ride out the heat, the Southern California summer, up high in the mountains, hopping around Big Bear and other neighboring mountain towns. But then nothing ever really goes as planned, I suppose. To all of a sudden be like, nope, that's just gone and you got to figure it out. I feel like life is a lot of figure it out sort of moments. So we took a few days to just relax, try to calm down, breathe, nurture ourselves, and to distantly and with masks on and the whole shebang, even to see a friend from afar is just a treat, especially in times of stress. My heart is so full in so many ways. I wish the circumstances had been different, of course, and I wasn't so startled out of my situation. But it was really nice to just breathe for a little bit, know we were safe, know we had a place that wasn't too hot because we were so close to the ocean. It had been a little while since I had touched the Pacific, and I certainly wasn't expecting it to happen so soon, that's for sure. Yeah, so surreal. And what's even more sort of bonkers about the entire situation is I'm currently coming to you from another forest, albeit a completely different one than before. I didn't want to overstay, and my calling to get back into trees was very strong. Like, I'd never really experienced it before. I had had the privilege of being saved by this friend and this driveway on another occasion, and I felt like I kind of settled into it a little more, just sunk into where I was. I felt a little bit more grounded, I think, but I just had this inner sense of I need to get back to the trees. Yeah, I really sound like a different person. Just my chest was like, I have to get back. I have to get back. We discovered I had the very clever idea of seeing if the national parks were open. So, after a quick search, turns out even though the national forests are closed, the national parks are open, which I was not expecting at all. And I had been wanting to buy an annual pass for a while and wanting to explore any hoozles. So there was one campground out of all of the campgrounds that had places available. And I am currently sitting at the very bottom of Kings Canyon by the Kings River in Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Park. Being in a campground is a little weird, not gonna lie, because again, we usually just do dispersed camping, forest camping, wilderness camping, where essentially there's a dirt road with a bunch of potholes that you try to drive around safely, and then there's just a bunch of pull-offs in the middle of the wilderness where, in my experience, you generally can't see anybody else. It's like you're in your own little pocket of wherever you happen to be. This is not that. There is no dispersed camping allowed in the national parks, which, makes sense. I get it. And with the national parks pass, I got a huge discount. It is the best camping deals around. I am telling you, as of right now when I'm recording this, it's only $11 a night. And they have bathrooms and water spigots. And I'm just like, where am I? This is luxury for $11 a night. Oh my gosh. The very first night we set out camping, we were aiming for some BLM land, or Bureau of Land Management land, which is public land. And we were all set to go. And turns out the area we were looking to be on the land in was completely landlocked by private property, so we couldn't get to it. Apparently in that area of California, that is often the case. And that sucks. So we drove around accidentally on private property on a windmill farm. I don't recommend ever actually being at the base of a giant windmill. It's freaking terrifying. Drove out of there off of some more very bumpy roads. I don't use that GPS navigation anymore because it was very wrong. And it was getting dark and we needed a place to sleep that night. So we wound up at a more like formal type chain of campgrounds place. And it was almost $90 a night. I was like, holy smokes. Holy smokes. And here I am in a national forest at the bottom of a beautiful canyon by a river amongst a bunch of white fir trees and cedar trees. You know how much I love my cedar friends. I saw cedar trees when we were driving in here and I was like, yes, hello, I found you. I know your cousins. They live on a mountain and they're very nice, so it's nice to meet you. Which is really nice. And the camp spots here are really, really, really far apart, which is so nice. I assume it's going to get busier on the weekend coming up. But right now, it is a Wednesday. And there's a couple people, but it's very nice. I think the closest person is I don't know, 300 feet away? Well, the nearest tent, I should say. I don't see any humans over there, but it's really nice. It's so nice. And fortunately, because at the top of the canyon where the Sequoia trees are, it's about 6,500 feet in elevation, and it's a bit cooler up there in the summer. But down at the bottom of the canyon where I am, it's like 100 degrees during the day, which, not fun, but our spot is a beautiful mix of shade under the trees with just enough residual light coming in for our solar panels. So the bus was very manageable all day, and thank goodness for that. Getting here yesterday was another story. Oh, goodness me. So once we left the respite of our beautiful friend's driveway, we ended up sleeping on the street outside of a friend's house in the middle of Los Angeles. And it is like such a freaking treat to see them always. And I'm just reminded like how many just like freaking awesome people. I know I've talked about this already, but like it's just my heart. I feel like thankful's not even a big enough word. So we saw them eat some really good Indian food from my favorite Indian place ever, and then slept just outside their place, and then headed up to the national park. What was supposed to be a 4.5-hour drive turned into like a 7-hour drive. We did stop for lunch on the way, but in order to get here from Southern California, you have to drive through the Center Valley of the state. And it is scorching. Like, I'm talking 104 plus the whole way. So, my fiance and I drive separately when we travel. I drive our little red car, which has air conditioning. Very nice, very spoiled. And my fiance, with the cats, drives the bus, which does not have air conditioning at all. And when you're not in the shade and you're just in the middle of the sun and it's over 100 degrees, it gets so hot. We were taking breaks to like wet down the cats so that they loved that, but it cools them down, feeding them extra wet food that's watered down just to try to keep everybody hydrated. And we didn't know, of course, at the time, that the one camp spot that we got, in the national park, all the way at the bottom of the canyon. It's about an hour drive from the entrance. Our bus made it fine. We did double check all of that stuff, that the length of our vehicle was fine. We double checked the weather. We knew it would be a little warmer, but we saw that our spot was very shaded online, so we were good with all of that. But yeah, it was just a lot. It's really hard to drive when it's so warm. The previous day we ran into the same thing driving up through wine country to get to Los Angeles, and just stuck in traffic like crazy when the sun is just beating down. It's so much. It takes a lot out of you. A lot out of you. So, I suppose this current spot is a bit of an interim, but aren't all camping spots, I suppose. You can't stay forever. We have a friend, not terribly far, who has some property, who has graciously offered to let us stay for an undetermined length of time. My gut says not to stay for too long, and maybe make it to another national park or two before the snow comes in. Because that's the thing. I love the mountains. I love them. But you can't get to them with a bus in the winter. Nope. There's just no way. Yeah. Because, man, now I'm like, oh man, national parks are great. Again, I do love the free dispersed camping and would like to stick mainly to that. But as a treat every once in a while to just have some place where we can safely dispose of trash, get some water, a little refresh. My goodness, a national park for $11 a night. Yes, that's where I want to be. For sure. Ugh. And the sequoias in this park. So I had previously taken a trip to see the redwoods, which are huge. And I was like, I feel like redwoods are just so massive. Like, how big can a sequoia actually be? Well, the answer is, my friends, real freaking big. They are real big. What struck me is some of them are just as big as redwoods that I have met, but they are significantly younger. I think the oldest redwood tree I met was about 4,000 years old, which, like, comprehending that is like a whole other, it bends your brain a bit. The second largest sequoia in this park, whom I met this afternoon, is only about 1,700 years old. And I'm like, shoot, if a sequoia could live to 4,000 years old, how big could a sequoia get? Probably real freaking big. I swear, my shoulders relax down like 5 inches every time I'm in trees. It was like that when we were driving. As soon as we got into the park, you enter in a Sequoia Grove, and all of a sudden I was just a lot calmer. And it smells incredible here. Gosh, you're just hit with a mix of sweet fir smells and just saps and needles, and both dried and fresh still on the tree. It's a whole sensory experience. I think that's the biggest thing about being somewhere. Disneyland, I suppose, does the same thing when they waft the scents of popcorn and vanilla down Main Street. It becomes a full sensory experience. The sound, the smell, even there's a taste in the air. A good one, not to worry. Yeah, I missed that. It's like the entire forest is encouraging you to just be. It is a lot harder to do that when you're sleeping in a parking lot in a city you're not familiar with no curtains. I still haven't put curtains on the bus. That's kind of a problem for that sort of overnight experience. But I'll get there. Just when you're out in the middle of the wilderness with no one around and just the trees for neighbors, I don't want curtains. They're so great. So whenever I'm sort of in society a little, I'm reminded like, oh, you should probably make those curtains because it's a little weird and everyone can probably see in like a fishbowl. And then I'm like, oh shoot, I gotta make curtains. And then I go right back out into nature and I'm like, I don't want curtains. It's just a lot. So we'll be here through the end of the week. Just a few more days. And then we'll see what happens next. I'm quite excited to find out. And I am going to enjoy sitting in this grove of cedar trees. I always end up in the middle of a circle of cedars, don't I? But, yeah. I look forward to see what kind of adventure is going to happen next.